This continues our lecture on section 2.3, and what we're going to be continuing with is our opposites and our absolute values, and then we're going to be using adding on a number line. So to continue with part C here, we have the absolute value to be evaluated first, and then once we get that evaluated, so that's just the number without its sign, 105, 200 seconds here. Then the next thing that we do is we go ahead and we say the opposite of that. So we're going to take the opposite of this number. So now that we have the opposite of that number, we read the next one on the outside of that and we say, okay, we're going to take the opposite of this negative 105 200 seconds, and that's going to give us a positive number. And so we're going to have a positive 105 200 seconds. And so that will be our final answer. But notice that we did one step at a time, starting from the furthest inside parentheses and stepping out, just like order of operations. So absolute value gave us the blue, positive. The opposite gave us the red, negative. And finally, the opposite of that gave us the green, positive. Okay, now we're going to go down to the next one and we're going to say the same thing. Now let's read this thing. This says the opposite of the opposite of the opposite of the absolute value of a negative 7. So the first thing we're going to do is going to start furthest inside here at the absolute value. The absolute value of a negative 7 is a 7, a number without its sign. Then we're going to go to the opposite of that 7 that we got, and that's going to give us a negative 7. And so now we have a negative 7. And then next we're going to go to the next one. It says the opposite of that number. And so the opposite of a negative 7 is a positive 7. And then finally, we're going to go the furthest one out here and we're going to say the opposite of a positive 7. And the opposite of a positive 7 is a negative 7. Now the color with this, I hope, really helps to bring that out in terms of what we did each time. And some way you're going to have to make me see that. And one of the ways is to just rewrite each step and keep dragging these along if you don't have the color to go along. So for instance, we would have the absolute value of 7. A negative 7 is a 7, and then we still have the opposite here and the opposite here and the opposite here. And then the next step, we do the opposite of a positive 7, so that's a negative 7, so we move that one in. And then we still have the opposite and the opposite, so we're now down to the opposite of a negative 7, and that gave us the positive 7, and then we still have the negative 7 out here, which ends up with the negative 7 that we saw from the beginning, and that's another way of showing the same thing. All right, with that, now we're going to move along to adding real numbers on a number line. Now this is a really rudimentary process. So here we have the number line. Remember that moving to the left is negative and moving to the right is positive. So we're getting smaller and smaller by moving to the left and larger by moving to the right. If we want to add on a number line, the thing that we do is we start at 0. And I'm going to show you this process just using some arrows as a real big blocky instance of what's going on, and then where we end up is where our answer is. So with the 7 plus 3, if I start here at 0 and then I move over here to 7, so I move 7 units to the right, that's a positive 7, and now I'm going to be starting there and I'm going to move 3 units, 1, 2, 3 units to the left, and where I end up, that is going to give me my answer, and we see that that is a positive 4, sorry, not a negative 4, that's a 4 on the number line, and so my answer here is a positive 4. Now one of the reasons that this is a really important thing to do with you is because you get this movement on the number line and going this way and then coming back this way. That shows subtraction on a number line, and that's how we develop our rules. Now I'm going to continue this in the next lecture of how to go about the next ones.